Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 83 of The Raw Men. And this time we are talking to Mario Mouton, who says that that is Cajun and has a special Cajun pronunciation. He is the author of Tiny Thinkers. Mario, what is Tiny Thinkers and why did you write this?
Well, what Tiny Thinkers are is a series of books that I wrote for my kids. So my daughter's 11 now. When she was 7 years old, I wrote her approximately about 60 different stories about scientists and science concepts. 20 of those, as my wife says, sucks. So we have basically about 40 books that are stories that I wrote for my daughters, and basically I would read them to them at nighttime like bedtime stories. Now, some of the stories that I wrote, they worked on with me because, I don't have 60 scientists off the top of my head, so I'd have to research. So my daughter would help me, research these scientists a little bit later on, and it became a project between she and I uh, to work these books out. So there's 40 stories highlighting scientists, and it's told as though the scientist is a kid going on an adventure. So I could hold up a book here. This is the first book was Charlie and the Tortoise,
I
and
believe. No, I got a different one. I have another science children's book here.
so what Charlie and the Tortoise was just Charles Darwin going on a trip to the Galapagos, and then uh, finding out that the finches had different beaks, and then that's the gist of the story. Now, when this book came out, well, the first review of the book was by Ken Ham, which I can get into later. But the only bad review, because I consider Ken Ham's review wonderful, was a Darwin scholar, I guess, and he said, why didn't you put an ornithologist in there to say that he helped Charles Darwin, with the specimens? And I had to tell him, I wrote this book for a 4-year-old, so it's got a talking tortoise in it as well. So I don't think I needed to really hit all of those points to get the story. The second book is called Richie Doodles. It's about Richard Feynman. It explains basically what happened. It talks about atoms, subatomic particles, subatomic interaction. Uh, Basically, for a 4-year-old, a kid's not going to walk away understanding quantum mechanics, but they're going to be able to go, oh, atoms are small and subatomic particles are smaller, and pretty much get an idea. We're talking to a 4-year-old, so you don't have to go into very much detail in it. You just want to introduce them to basically the smallest of things, which was what Richard Feynman talked about. So
I actually have that first book somewhere in this house. I thought it was here on my desk, but no, that's a different one. For whatever reason, I had a different children's science book on a kind of a similar theme here, but my apologies. I thought it was right on hand, but I do have it. I read it on another podcast at one point. So,
awesome. I
and
hope you
then
enjoyed it.
I did.
Yeah, yeah. Uh,
So,
you
so
know,
what did Ham have to say about your book?
well, he somehow tried to tie it to. Well, he stated this book is not going to make you go out and have an abortion, but it's catering to the kind of people that would. Uh, he said he wanted for his grandkids to read my book and understand fairy tales. You can find his review. It's called Boys and Girls and Geese. You can find it. Just Google Boys and Girls and Geese, and the review will come up. He 8,000 plus words for an 800-word book. He he spent on it. So I actually mailed him his copy. When I got my first copy, I mailed it straight to Ken Ham. And I mailed one to Ray Comfort, and I mailed one to Kirk Cameron, and I mailed out books because I wanted one of these guys to write a review. Ken Ham wrote the review before the book ever even hit the market.
Yeah, well,
He
you
sold us a
wasted your
lot of books.
time. You wasted
He,
your time sending one to Kirk Cameron.
yeah,
The
yeah.
other two,
Ken Ham, Ken Ham put that story out real fast. He sold us a lot of books. Uh,
very good.
Yep. So what I did is I wrote back a story to Ken Ham because that's what I do. I write children's books, and if you don't mind, it'd take about 3.5 minutes. I'll read you my story that I wrote for Ken.
All right.
And
Tell
I
us the story.
uh, Kenny knew that a flood was coming and that he could build a boat. He was nowhere near a sea or a lake or a river or even a moat. How big of a boat might Kenny need to weather the flood that was coming indeed? He knew that his boat would have to be large, so he hired the best builder, but he was in charge. He told the builder to fire all the workers that would not sign a waiver that said they'll accept Jesus Christ as their personal savior. No problem, said the builder. I will give them the axes, even though you want to use money from everyone's taxes. Kenny said, I want my boat to house 2 of each animal, big enough for T-Rexes that may act tyrannical. I want stalls for 2 lions, giraffes, and some zebras, a place to keep ants and brain-eating amoebas. The wood came by truck is how it was delivered. I will build it exactly like Noah, Kenny had figured, except I will probably use cranes and a lift because sauropods no longer exist. He gathered his animals 2 by 2. Of course, they lined up like well-mannered animals do. The lions were standing right behind the gazelles that were standing behind 2 baptized Amazonian snails. The flood is coming, Kenny would say all the time. Load up the elephants, load up the swine, load up the tigers, load up the apes. In the kangaroo pouches, put each 2 kinds of venomous snakes. Every animal indeed, all 5 million species. The builder then asked Kenny, what will you do with the feces? In fact, where will you store all the food for the mammals? The boat is quite full, and we still have 4.5 million more animals. Get everything off the boat, Kenny said. His face turned a color, the reddest of red. All of the animals will starve, the builder then said, and a vein popped out of Kenny's neck and his head. Everything off the boat, Kenny yelled. Get the zebras, the lions, the Amazon snails, get the tigers, the lizards, and both of the foxes. Where the hell are my termites in these wooden boxes? All the animals need to go home. The kangaroos can hop back to Australia for all that I care. Remove the anteaters and the pair of brown bears. Replace all the animal babies with babies that will not eat too much. Like elephants so small, they'll eat 1 peanut for lunch. I want frogs so young that they do not have legs, and a pterodactyl so young it still has shell on its head. Pterodactyls are extinct, the builder told Kenny. They died 65 million years ago, so there's no longer any. Blasphemy, Kenny said from his boat with no water, as he fired the best builder because the builder was smarter. They died from an asteroid, the builder told Kenny, but Kenny did not care. He just turned up his nose and said, were you there? All that Kenny had to do was fill up his ark with 5 million species of baby animals before the flood starts, and Kenny learned that even 5 million babies was too much, even if he planned to feed crackers to baby hippos for lunch. Kenny's boat was finally prepared for the flood. The flood came. It was not water. It was not even mud. As Kenny stood on top of his boat that he ruled and watched the flood that would be known as the Flood of the Fooled. Ken Ham's boat was not built to save anything's life, not even the brain-eating amoeba or the amoeba's nice wife. It was built to sell gifts and homeschool books that he wrote to the Flood of the Fooled that helped sell Kenny's boat. The end. So if you want an idea of what all Tiny Thinkers stories are, that they're all written in that form.
Okay. And so you obviously had one for the first one. What was it? Charlie and the Tortoise. What was the title of that?
Charlie and the Tortoise. It was for Charles Darwin.
Yeah. And then you had for Richard Feynman. What other? Just share me some titles so I can guess the scientists, or show me covers if you happen to have them within reach.
Well, there's only 2 books printed right now. So the next story is Rachel Hears a Song.
Rachel.
Silent Spring.
No, not
Rachel Carson. So
yeah,
Rachel Carson wrote.
You have humbled me and exposed my ignorance.
Rachel Carson wrote Silent Spring, which led to the ban of DDT later on. Even though she didn't call for a ban, it led to the ban because she asked a simple question: we know how it helps us, but how does it hurt? So that exposed that. The story after that one will be Carl Went to the Library.
And would that be Sagan?
That would be Sagan, and it's a 100% true story about Carl Sagan. And he had asked his mother, what is a star? And she sent him to the library. She got him a library card. He asked for a book about stars. First, the librarian brought him back a book about celebrities. And then he said, no, stars that twinkle. So that's a 100% true story. From right there, Carl Sagan learned that the sun is a star. And if the sun is a star, then all those twinkling lights that you see out there are suns that could potentially have planets. And so after that, this one might humble you too, is Garrett Morgan.
Yep, that I don't know it.
So Garrett Morgan was an African American inventor, and he invented what would later be known as the gas mask. His what he built was a smoke mask with a hood with a tube that goes down to the ground, and could take clean air off the ground where the smoke was high. And so what happened what my story tackles is a lot of things. It teaches you about him as an inventor, teaches about the science behind what he did, but it also is a story about an African American inventor, and there's very few African American heroes out there. And what Garrett Morgan did to be a hero is, I'll start from the beginning of his story, is Garrett Morgan would have to pretend he'd dress up like an Indian, and he would hire white actors to sell his products. So he would go to a town, he would hire a white actor, that white actor would pretend to be the owner of his business. Garrett Morgan would dress up like an Indian he had a story from the Wapoli tribe in Canada. And so he would demonstrate this product. He would demonstrate his smoke mask by lighting things up, tar and such, inside of a tent. He would walk around inside that tent for 20 minutes and come out, hey, I'm okay. Well, Cleveland was putting in basically the water pipe that goes out from one of the cribs in the lake that brings the water into the city. There was an explosion. Rescuers went in, but the first response rescuers always die. The rescuers went in, and they didn't come back out. So they'd remembered Garrett Morgan. They went to him. He and his brother Frank put the hoods on. They went into the tunnel, and they started pulling bodies out. So the guy's a real hero, but he's also a hero in this sense. We might look at Batman and Iron Man as superheroes. Well, they didn't have any superpowers. They had really awesome suits. Garrett Morgan had a really awesome suit, and he did this. And so I love that book because it's going to get to talk about racism. It's going to get to teach you about Garrett, and it's going to be able to give a hero. Other books that I have, A Planet Named George.
Okay.
That's William Herschel. William Herschel discovered Uranus, and he had first named it Sidus Georgium, which means George's star. So we used to have a planet out there named George.
Okay, so, I'm going to share a story with you since you brought that up, just because it's relevant. Part of the reason that Pluto is no longer a planet was because they were identifying other, essentially, ice balls as planets, and so they identified one, and I don't remember exactly the radius that it was in, beyond Jupiter, and I think beyond Pluto was this little ice ball, and it had a moon, or it has a moon. So the people who discovered it, they get to name it, and so this guy named it George's star. Well, the people who named this one named it what is it? I'm trying to remember the name of the TV show. There was a TV show with a warrior princess, Xena.
Okay.
Is it Xena?
Yes, Xena warrior princess. Yeah.
Okay. So they named the planet Xena, and the moon around it they named Galadriel. And so now this was based on a TV show, obviously, right? Xena warrior princess, and it was not based on ancient mythology like all of the other planets were. It was just based on this one TV show. So this character has only ever been represented by one actress, and that was, I think her name was Lucy Lawless.
Okay.
Yeah, and so just imagine Lucy Lawless then finds out that somebody has named a planet after her. And her friend Galadriel, the other actress playing the other character, and just imagine how do you fit that in your head that somebody's named a planet after you?
Well, it's pretty awesome, a planet. They name asteroids after people all the time, so that would even be a tremendous honor.
Yeah, but that's an asteroid.
Yeah.
Significant thing there. But some people did react to it rather harshly,
Yeah.
And so that the planet is much like, Georgia's star. It's no longer called Georgia's star, and the planet Xena is no longer called Xena. They've given it a number. I don't remember what it is. It's but why take away the name to give it a number?
Yeah. Uh, I don't know. I wish I knew. But it sounds like something I could write a book about,
All right.
possibly.
So you've only written children's books, have you?
No, I've been writing since I was 18 years old, so I have novels written as well. Nothing sciencey, for the most part, action adventure type books. Just I wrote the children's books for my oldest daughter who is 11 now. Back when she was, 4 to 6 years old. I'm writing books now for my youngest daughter about famous painters because if you can see behind me, this is an art room that we're in. My wife's a painter, so
Mm-hmm.
that's in our world as well. So the next kid gets all artists and painters as stories, which hopefully someday we'll be able to work out into some books. And then I've also written children's books for them, kind of on the basis of if I die, I want you guys to know this. And most of it's think out the box type stuff.
Yeah, very good. What it prompted you to hold this position that you do and to advocate for your children this way? And then secondarily or secondly, whatever, tell me how your kids respond to that.
Okay. The reason that I wrote this book is because, or all these books for my daughter, is because we live in Louisiana where science education is definitely not paramount. So one thing that happens with not just girls but with boys here is the culture. Typically, a kid in school has no desire to go any further to look for a college degree to expand any further than what his rural area offers. Well, we're from Lake Charles, Louisiana. Our area offers oil refineries. So you're in school, and even though the material's being covered, your mindset is, I don't need this stuff. I'm going to go work in the plant. Doesn't require, it pays real good, and it doesn't require a degree to go in there and turn knobs. You know,
Yeah.
for a girl, I mean, our most educated girls will become school teachers. They'll become nurses. Sometimes they'll become a doctor. Uh, Far and few in between, but it happens. And so I didn't want my kids to be pigeonholed into this idea that they should only have enough knowledge to work in their rural area. We know our kids are going to have to, live and thrive in a global economy. Our grandparents worked in a local economy. All their business was just a few hours away. Our parents work in a national economy. For the most part, we're working in a national slash a regional. Our parents did. We're working in a national slash global. Our kids need to be further prepared for that. I just didn't want my girls to be uh, pigeonholed with those things. So I wanted to expose them to as much as I possibly could at a young age. And then you can go on YouTube and find Lila Astronomy 101, and you can see when my daughter was 7 years old, she gave a lecture, opening lecture for an event with the Chicago Astronomical Society on what dead dinosaurs and asteroids have to do with each other. And she finishes it with a poem and says, "Welcome to Astronomy 101." Now, the fact that she is it doesn't mean that she's smarter. She's just been exposed to a lot more at a young age, and therefore, hopefully, she's only 11 now. I don't care what she becomes in life. I don't care if she becomes a scientist or whatever. I'm just going to make sure that I gave her all the tools and resources that I didn't have, because I was never inspired whenever I was in school. School teaches you things, but they don't teach you what you can do with it.
Well, then that brings up another question. Then, before I get to the other one I already asked you,
Mhm.
you said you were not inspired. You were not inspired in school. It's something flipped a switch in you.
I went to work, and the work choice that I had, I went into the environmental business. So what I do is we tear down oil refineries from the top down, but then after the oil refinery is down, we take the earth down. And when you start digging in the dirt, you start finding things, right? And I grew up in South Louisiana, so I grew up hunting, fishing, all those things. We reloaded our own bullets and stuff when I was a kid. Spent most of my time out in the woods with my dad. We were looking for bullet casings, so my eyes were always tuned in to looking on the ground for things. because when you're tuned in and looking on the ground for things, you find Indian artifacts and stuff like that. So it already had an interest in something, more anthropology. Well, when I got into this business and you start finding things, that grows. Well, as I came up in our business, and at this point in my life, I'm a project manager, so I'm the guy who's over the teardown and the entirety of these projects. So I have biologists, I have engineers, geologists that actually work for me or under me now. But whenever I was coming up, I had those guys to bounce questions off of. And so for the last 23 years, I've been having real conversations with scientists explaining to me what we find when we get down into the rock, and we start finding fossils in the rock. Well, from the time my kids could walk, I had already gained an interest in finding fossils, and so I started taking my kids. We fossil hunt as a family now, and we travel all over the country to West Texas, or we might be on the East Coast looking for shark teeth, or we might be up north in Illinois in Mouton Creek looking for concretion fossils, ferns and jellyfish and soft-bodied animals that were saved there. So it was actually my job that made that spark. I walked out of school not knowing who Charles Darwin was or any scientist. I knew who Jonas Salk was, and that was pretty much it. And Louis Pasteur. So typically, we live in an agricultural area, so that's the main drive of where you're at. So we actually have people that go to college for horticulture degrees and ag degrees and such, but that's the extent. So people are only going to college for things that they can do locally.
Okay.
Hopefully that answered it.
Yeah, I'm a little distracted because a large black cat has decided to suddenly sit on my shoulder like a parrot. Yeah, so I'm dealing with that. So how old is your oldest child?
My oldest child's 11 now.
So. Okay. And what would you say is her reaction to the lessons that you've been giving her? What kind of an effect has had on her, and does it have any effect on her socializing with other people?
Okay. Well, she can't have science conversations with other kids around her, but that first daughter, Lila, she's in she goes to a school for gifted kids. And she excels in school. The problem is much like myself, she hates school, but it's a lot easier for her than it was for me.
Now, you said your other daughter was not able to have science discussions when other people were around. What do you mean?
Well, nobody really understands what she's talking about that live here. So, yeah. But we've done more than that at our own home here. I built a fossil park that's 1 acre that has trails through it that go to different areas for different eras of fossils. So we have if she has kids that come over to the house, they have these walking trails that go through the woods, and we'll have a mock Permian era set up to where they only find in Permian fossils, and the kids get to keep them. We have some pine trees, and the kids can dig it around there looking for actual amber with insects in it. We have a fake mound.
Do you go out and buy fossils to plant for the kids?
Some of them we buy. Most of them we go find. So we as a family we go find them. You go out to West Texas and you get in different formations. You'll be in a Permian era, but the next hill over is all Cretaceous. So you could be down there finding brachiopods and crinoids and different kinds of things like that, and you can find them by the hundreds actually. But for the most part, we'll buy a lot. We find a lot, and the kids get to keep them. And then I've had some scientists, fellows, and fossil hunters donate stuff to me. Like we have a full oreodont, which is not that old of an animal. It's from about 5 million years ago. It's still old, still fossilized bones, but we have the entirety of it here. The fossil park's really cool. Sometimes we have events, and we have up to 90 people showed up at one of them. So there's kids out there finding fossils, and
this is essentially your property,
my yard,
your yard.
yeah. I have 12 acres, so I sectioned off a beautiful part of 1 acre that has a lot of beautiful trees, and it's pretty neat. Anybody who goes onto I don't know. I can if folks want to come see them on Twitter, put in MJ_Mouton and just type in fossil park in a search there, and you'll be able to see our fossil park that's
Remember,
here.
if you have any links that you want to share with people, just let me know, and I'll make sure to include them below.
Okay, we'll do. So not only am I worried about my kids, we're worried about advocating for education for anybody who cares to. I'm not going to go pushing things on people who don't want it, but if they come to my house fair game, they're going to see some things. I got microscopes with, that you don't have to put your eyes to. We got, to where they can put slides in and see them on computer screens. We have other fun stuff like zip lines and stuff like that too that my kids have. But
you have zip lines in your yard?
we do. Yeah. So it's a wonderland here. Uh, but I'm not here all the time. I have a home here and I have a home in Chicago, and my wife and kids go back and forth. They're down here now, and they'll probably stay down here permanently. So my daughter spent her first few years at school in Louisiana, and then I have another one who's coming up who's in kindergarten now. So school's still out on her. We'll see how much she takes to it. She's a lot more mechanically inclined than the other one was, so maybe it'd be something different.
Okay.
So.
Well, do you have any other projects like this fossil park and the books and everything you want to bring up?
No, not that we really need to talk about. I just want to tell people about the books for the most part and get people interested in them. And I want people to realize that there's going to be 40 of these books coming out, and they're diverse. Women in science. There's so many women in science that you guys haven't heard of, but they're amazing.
Well, I do like your premise of taking the common first name and just like you represent Charles Darwin as Charlie and he's a kid.
Yep.
And you did the same thing with Feynman, and that's a nice way to impart a lot of these stories. By the way, one that I would suggest to you is Mary Anning.
Well, I have Mary Anning. Yep.
You've already done a book on Mary Anning?
Oh yeah, Mary found a dinosaur. Yeah, it's great. Her and her brother Joseph, and she goes and finds a dinosaur and she sells it, and it's good. And I even mentioned, she sold seashells by the seashore in there.
But these aren't printed yet.
They're not printed. The stories are, and we have covers drawn for them. The only ones that are fully illustrated right now are the Charlie, the Richie, the Carl, Rachel Carson. We have started on Garrett Morgan, and we have Ada Lovelace fully drawn. We do them as we go. But yeah, I have Mary Anning. Mary, wonderful stuff there. I also have some that I'm not sure will ever make it, but Edwin Cope, the Bone Wars. So those are so awesome.
Story too.
Yeah, that's a great story.
Tell the story of both of them.
Yeah,
it
is.
How do you impart that to kids where these two guys are cheating and stealing from each other? And
well, I mean, here's the thing: is I don't like to use the words "dumb it down," but because I don't want any of this information dumbed down. But what you just tell it is when you put their story in rhyme form, it does it on its own. You can put that the workers had a rock fight. I mean, that's fine. It's not promoting violence. You can put that they were dynamiting, rocks out in their spots out in Wyoming and Colorado and such. It's really not as hard as you. Well, I keep saying that. I say, hey, it's not as hard as you guys think. And my wife says, Mario, you need to realize that not everybody can do what you're doing. And maybe so. It comes easy to me, but the Cope and Marsh is not that difficult. I've done books with two other people before because you had Jean Champollion and Thomas Young who worked on the Rosetta Stone. Thomas Young he deciphered the first words, and then Jean-Francois Champollion he finished deciphering because he had this knowledge of the Coptic language, and he was able to do so. So then there was this kind of pissing match between England and France over who deciphered the Rosetta Stone, and so I wrote the book with those two guys together too because with neither being a villain.
Yeah, and it's hard to represent the Bone Wars with neither one being a villain.
They're both villains, yeah.
Yeah.
So So you can do that, and then in my Bone Wars book, in the end, you can have the moral lesson in rhyme form, and the moral lesson is was it worth it? You know, and I'll leave that up to everybody because what do you think, Aaron? It was worth it. I mean, those guys found so much.
Yeah. A side story about that, that there was I remember when I was a kid, I was told that there was no such thing as a Brontosaurus. And when I was a little kid, Brontosaurus was actually the most famous dinosaur there ever was.
Yeah,
However,
from them.
Brontosaurus at that time was thought to be an Apatosaurus, and they didn't have a head for the fossil of the Apatosaurus that they found. So they used a Camarasaurus head and just kind of made a cast of it and put it on it because you can't show a fossil in a museum that doesn't have a head. So
Right.
they found another similar looking sauropod and just put a head on it so people could appreciate it. And that was a Camarasaurus Apatosaurus blend.
Yep.
But funny thing is, so they said there's never really been a Brontosaurus because of this. And so just a couple of years back, it was decided that the Apatosaurus that eventually became named Brontosaurus, I actually had so many different points of difference between other Apatosaurs that it was declared to be a distinct species from Apatosaurs, and then in which case, what to call it suddenly became obvious. So, yes, Virginia, there is a Brontosaurus.
Now
Again, yeah.
yeah. And if you follow the paleontologist Jack Horner, a lot of times way back then, what you would have is you would have a juvenile and then you'd have an adult.
Yep.
And they were given those two different names, not recognizing that they were juveniles to adults. So
yeah, I remember when I was a kid and I was studying this. I mean, I had a book of dinosaurs, and it went into things like Triceratops, and on the next page is Toroceratops, and I think, the hell is Toroceratops any different than Triceratops? These are the same damned animal. Yeah, and I was just a little kid in the '60s at that point.
But the beautiful thing is I see every kid that comes over to our house and they're exposed to all the science, their eyes light up. And it's not just the kids. When the adults come, their eyes light up. So you see adults learning things for the first time ever. And one of the cool things about these books is when you have a kid who's 2 and 3 and 4 years old, and maybe they can't read yet, and the parent is reading the book, that parent has to learn the science. So
yeah,
if we can get these books out to enough people, and like I said, all you need to know is the basics. I'm not some scientific guru. I'm just a dad who likes science, right?
Yeah. Well, I do like the format on how you represent these scientists, essentially as kids. I don't know how you do Louis Pasteur there. I mean, I don't know how you would do a lot of these. I mean, you said you have a talking tortoise,
Yep.
For the Charlie. So I guess you you just take liberties where you have to.
Well, I take liberties where I have to, because when you're dealing with a kid who's 3 and 4 years old, if you write a science book and it's just facts, that kid may read it, or you may read it to your kid once. They're not going to go on their own and pick it off the shelf.
Yep.
These are written so that a kid says, I want you to read this to me tonight. I want you to read this to me tonight, just like they would a Seuss book. There's people that put out wonderful children's books. I like them. But you know what? My kids are going for the Seuss books. They're fun, they rhyme, and they got stuff to point at.
Yep.
So,
all right. Well, Mario, I want to give you a moment to close out if there's any last thing you wanted to bring up. And I appreciate your books. I do, like I said, I don't know where it is at the moment, but I do have that first book. I think it's on my bookshelf in here, but I do have that. And anything, and remember, and don't make sure that I have links if you want to share them.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out where to hit a chat button here on here. Can I email them to you?
Yeah, you can. Yes, absolutely.
Okay, I'll do so right after we talk. So basically, what I'd like to leave people with is you can go out and buy my books, and that would be wonderful. The more support we have, probably the faster we can get these books out. But don't just worry about my books. There's a lot of wonderful science books for kids out there that should be in kids' hands. And I'm talking about the books that kids are going to go pick up off the shelves more than one time. Dinosaurs and all that rubbish basically covers us trashing the planet and dinosaurs coming back later on and picking it up. Or you have the Trouble with Dragons, which addresses climate change and global warming. So there's lots of books out there that are wonderful. If you don't get mine, go get those.
And the book that was already sitting on my desk, you know, My Name is Stardust.
There you go.
Okay.
All those are important. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mario.
All right.